Let's actually go ahead and jump into the calls and talk to Dylan in Florida. Dylan, you had some curiosity about neurodivergence and gender. What's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, hello. I just got off work and I'm right by a train track, so if a train goes by, I'll try to mute it.
Well, fair enough.
um,
Tell us what's on your mind.
but I was kind of curious to know if you've ever really heard of like gender and that sort of thing, and how autism and possibly even ADHD can kind of affect your perception of gender. Because I've kind of sort of read about it, and I kind of was like, oh, that kind of, it's not like similar, but it kind of would make sense for a lot of my perceptions of gender, because it doesn't, I don't know, gender's just so weird to me.
It really is. Miss O'Kiss, before I butcher it, can you walk the audience through something of a definition of gender?
Yeah. It's basically it's not that like autism is a gender, but that like because like gender is mostly about like social performance, or like a social construct type thing. Being autistic sometimes makes gives us a complicated relationship with our gender. So like, I mean, it's actually one I feel very, very firmly attached to there too, because it's not as clear cut. And being autistic makes it a lot wigglier, I suppose, for want of a better word. Like, I mean, some people are very attached to a specific gender and feel very strongly about it, and some people like myself, I don't really
Sure.
understand a lot of it, because a lot does seem to be performance aspecty, and sometimes people can feel quite strongly one way but present very differently another way, because it all gets mixed up. So it's kind of how, as an autistic person, you experience the concept of gender, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Dylan, does that line up with what you're referring to here?
Yeah, it's kind of because with me, I've felt decently comfy with being referred to as demi boy, because I kind of like the non-binary with just a little splash of math. But it's because but certain things, like I really love just, I guess, the vibe of butchness, and maybe it's just the masculinity of it, but just like butch lesbians, just their vibe has just always been immaculate to me. And I'm like, oh, I kind of want that. And I'm like, oh, wait, I'm ASAP. Why? I could be that. And I'm like, but like a skinny boy. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just always like certain things just make it feel weird, because I'm just like, I don't know. Gender's weird. Could you be both at the same time? Could you do,
Yeah, I mean, it's all made up, which doesn't mean it isn't important.
Right.
Like money is made up. Like the United States of America is a made up concept. Like we all just sort of agreed that that was a thing. And gender falls into that same category. And so it can feel really squishy while also being really rigid at the same time. And I very much relate to that sense of, well, we can just kind of do anything, but it can also get really nihilistic. Like I can appreciate that sense of, well, why are we even having these conversations? Like, why don't we just do away with gender? And Dylan, I maybe even started to hear that in your voice until you come out and say, but no, there are these pieces of it that are so me, that they are these like little cut and copied, like things I want to pull from the buffet that really matter to me. I mean, is that a fair way of describing this for you?
Yeah, because actually I'm kind of, it's kind of funny, because if I do go to a buffet, it's maybe, I'm not diagnosed autistic, but I'm like 95% sure I do have it. I am diagnosed with ADHD, but when it comes to food and topics of food and bits and pieces, that's honestly how I eat my food. Is make sure it doesn't touch, but it's still all there on the plate. Try to make it fit, if that makes sense.
It really does.
Well, I appreciate you bringing, yet another confusing autism-related gender word into the equation. And I guess, I'll take a quick aside to just thank the audience for being curious and for being interested and eager to make space for folks who have been marginalized so much. And I recognize how kind of confusing and sometimes even like what's the point on some of these topics, but these are also deeply, deeply human issues, and I think incredibly worthy of our time and attention. And so, Dylan, I really appreciate you raising some of these ideas. Was there anything else that you were maybe curious about that Miss O'Kiss might be able to walk you through, or anything else you wanted to say tonight?
I'm not too sure. I'm just really thankful that I got a call tonight because I was contemplating if I could try and call the transatlantic show, but I got off early tonight. So calling in tonight was really, really nice. Just sort of just going through life, most likely having autism and trying to figure things out, and just even one facet of gender possibly being figured out. Because life is so confusing.
Yeah, Jesus, do I relate to a lot of that. So thank you so much for bringing all this up. We're so glad that we got to talk to you, and hope to hear from you again.
Also, I want to add, like, self-diagnosis is super accepted in the autistic community. So, if you wanted to participate more in those spaces and we're unsure, because not having a formal diagnosis, like, you 100% welcome, and it can be a really good way to learn more about, you know, what it's like to be autistic, and maybe, take that 95% sure to like a 99.9% sure, which is about as much as I'm even able to get to.
Fair to say.
But yeah, because it's really hard to access diagnosis as an adult.
Hmm.
um, and especially, anyone who's not a cis white dude. Basically, it's hard.
Yeah,
All
the
right.
main thing that kind of pointed me in that direction was reading like lesser known symptoms, and one of them was feeling almost like an alien, and I kind of just started snot crying because I'm like, oh, so that's not really oh, and, other all sorts of things, but that was like the one thing that got me, is kind of feeling like you kind of got dropped in a world that's very similar to yours but just off. And
It's actually a really great piece, and I forget. I am a terrible human being. I am forgetting the author's name, but it's called like "Don't Mourn Us," and it kind of explores the alien dropped off, like Superman style, with like a family on Earth. Because I felt that way. I was the alien ever since middle school. So if you like look up like autism and Don't
Yeah,
Mourn Us, you'll
it's from
probably
the
find it.
Autism Network International, by Jim Sinclair. I'll make sure to have a link to that in the show notes as well.
I love that piece.
All right. Well, Dylan, thank you so much. You have a great night.
You too.